Hey everybody, Cynthia Maynard here. Today's video is dealing with the leftovers of that lamb roast that I had. So maybe you won't have leftovers, but if you do, what do you do with that? So I'm going to be making an Instant Pot stew, Mediterranean lamb stew, if you will, and that is what we're going to do. Hopefully that'll help you if you ever think, oh, what am I going to do? Because, sometimes when you heat up meat, unless you're making sandwiches, that's an idea. But sometimes it just doesn't taste as grand the next day just warming it up, you know what I'm saying? The lamb was so tender and delicious, and that recipe. I'll put the link down below if I can remember that. But the lamb roast was so good, and that recipe was super easy. So check that out if you haven't done so. Go ahead and click the subscribe button, and if you'd like to see art and cooking videos, subscribe to this channel. That'll be great. All right, let's check out this Instant Pot recipe for lamb Mediterranean stew. Okay guys, we're going to go ahead and hit the saute button, and we're going to get our oil going. Let that warm up just a little bit. I'm using extra virgin olive oil, but you can use whatever oil you have on hand. And that's going to give our leftover lamb a little zhuzh there to kind of give it some new life, I guess you can say. So we're going to make sure that we have that chopped into bite-sized pieces that fit nicely on the spoon, so maybe 3/4 of an inch-ish, whatever you like there. So I'm just chopping that away, and it's all warmed up and ready to toss in. It heats up very quickly, the Instant Pot, or at least my model. I have two of them, so they both cook very similarly. So I'm putting the lamb leftovers in there. So if you use raw lamb in this dish, you just want to maybe cook it a little bit longer. But because I'm using leftover, it's already partially cooked. So just sauteing that around, letting that get going there. After a few minutes of that, I'm going to remove it. So I'm just taking that out and put it back on my pie plate that I took it out of the fridge in. Gotta get all, they're trying to jump back out. All right, so once we have that all in there, we're going to add our aromatics and veggies. And I have there about a 1/2 cup of chopped celery, carrots, and red onion. You could use regular onion. I just happen to have a 1/2 of a red onion in my fridge, so that's what I used. But you can use whatever onion. You can use leeks, would be good as well, shallot. And then saute those for about 5 minutes. I'm putting a little extra oil and not much, just because it needed a little tiny bit more. You'll just have to judge. And saute those. Again, give it a few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes there, and let them soften. You don't have to give them a super long time, but just enough to kind of let it start doing its thing there. I'm going to clean my Instant Pot. I got some castaways. All right, so once that's taken care of, you want to go ahead and we're going to add some more things here. So I have 2 cups of chicken broth. You could use beef broth. You could use veggie broth. You could use water for that matter. I have 2 cups of chicken broth that I had in my fridge to use up, so that's what I am using. And then I'm just also taking the opportunity to deglaze the bottom of my pan. I've got a 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. This one happens to be fire roasted, which was really tasty, but you can just use regular crushed tomatoes, or you could use a 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes. This is a can of rinsed and drained chickpeas, because this is, after all, Mediterranean, right? So we need the chickpeas. So get that in there. And those are pretty much all the components, other than a few herbs, which I think is, I'm looking at my recipe there. I've got some thyme from my garden, and I'm going to just kind of pull on the little leaves there, and they come right off the twig. And then, so I'm doing that I have about 3 or 4 stems. You could use dried thyme if you've got that, maybe a teaspoon of dried thyme would work, or rosemary. I didn't have any rosemary, but rosemary would be wonderful. Getting a few more in there. And I've got some Italian seasoning there, just because I didn't have the rosemary, so I grabbed that because that usually has rosemary in it. some freshly cracked pepper, it's my Trader Joe's bottle, and some coarse salt. I have kosher salt. You could use sea salt with that. About a teaspoon maybe. Give it a stir, and then I'm going to get my lid. I guess I'm stirring for a long time. Oh, I'm putting my meat back in. Yeah, you want to put your meat back in. It is a lamb stew after all. Uh, we wouldn't want the lamb to be left out. So put the lamb back in and then give it a final stir all together. And then grab your lid. Make sure your sealing ring is all the way down. I always do that every time I use my Instant Pot. I just go around and I make sure it is completely in. Twist it, make sure it's on sealing and not venting, because we do want to pressure cook. And I am going to, because my pieces were not raw, I'm setting it for 35 minutes. If you're starting with raw lamb in this recipe, go ahead and do it for 45 minutes. But I did raw. And now it went through its course and I let it naturally release for about 15 minutes. And then you can let all the steam out and it will be ready to go. Super, super tasty. I'm just gonna get it on out of there. All right, so look at that goodness. So that is our lamb and all of our veggies. You can see our chickpeas and a yummy tomatoey broth. So I've just got some bowls here and it's just the three of us tonight. My husband will have leftovers when he comes home, and you just scoop it out. Nice hearty stew and good for you. And all the ingredients I use today are gluten-free. I chopped up some parsley from my little bouquet there. And you can just sprinkle the top with some parsley. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. We'll see you in the next video.